Jones. It's Super Regional Week. Arkansas survived a hard-fought regional with Nebraska. Now all that stands between Arkansas and Omaha is a best-of-3 series with North Carolina State at jam-packed Baum-Walker Stadium. This week, Andrew Sanders of the NC State radio broadcast joins us to give a preview of the Wolfpack. Scotty Bordelon also joins Seth Campbell and me to break down this week in Arkansas baseball. Plus, we take a look at happenings across the Southeastern Conference. But first, a word from our sponsor.
Massage Envy has been voted the best day spa and best massage in all of Northwest Arkansas. Great therapists and estheticians go along with a new service that I am truly excited about. Rapid Tension Relief uses a special tool that will melt the tension and soreness away. Trust me, you will not be disappointed in the results. I highly recommend this feature along with a total body stretch assisted stretch program. Whether you are competing at a high level or just want to relax, these services are for everyone. Massage, rapid tension relief, total body stretch, deep muscle treatment massage, you choose. Or you can try any combination of those. So the next time you're feeling tight, make sure to call my friends at Massage Envy.
This is the WholeHog Baseball Podcast, presented by Massage Envy, the only podcast devoted entirely to Arkansas baseball. Now, here's Matt Jones and Seth Campbell.
Arkansas and NC State Super Regional at Baum-Walker Stadium begins Friday at 5 o'clock. That game will be on ESPNU. They'll also play Saturday at 2 o'clock on ESPN2, and then they'll play an if necessary game Sunday afternoon beginning at 5 o'clock. That game will either be on ESPN2 or ESPNU. The Razorbacks are the top overall seed in the tournament, come in at 49 and 11 overall. NC State was an at-large bid. They were a number 2 seed in the Ruston Regional, and they are 33 and 17 overall coming into Fayetteville. It'll be the first meeting ever between Arkansas and North Carolina State. Also kind of surprising that you've got two of the winningest coaches in college baseball right now. Elliott Avent at North Carolina State has got the 6th most wins among active coaches, and Dave Van Horn has got the 7th most wins among active coaches, and this will be the first time they've ever met on the baseball field. And so a lot of interesting storylines going into Arkansas and NC State. We're going to go now to the phone lines. Andrew Sanders is the play-by-play voice of North Carolina State baseball, and he joins us now. Andrew, we appreciate you taking some time to talk about this Super Regional.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me on.
So let's talk some about NC State. As I've looked through their schedule, it looked like it was kind of a slow start to the season, 1-8 in ACC play, but they've really heated up coming into this regional. I think they've won something like 21 of their last 25 games. How did things turn around for this team this year?
Well, I think, it was certainly a slow start, not what this team was expecting. This team was ranked in the teens in the preseason, and it was for a number of reasons. The team was not fully healthy. The bullpen was really depleted. They had a 2-week COVID break. They also played a couple of the better teams in the ACC. We had 3 non-conference games, and that very second weekend jumped into ACC competition against the Georgia Tech team that pushed Vanderbilt pretty well. So, it was absolutely not the start they were looking for, but it's such a team with veteran leadership. I don't think anybody in that locker room panicked, and they were able to kind of figure out some roles on the pitching staff, and just since then have been on a run where they're playing about as well as anybody in the country.
You mentioned leadership starts at the top, and this is a team with a longtime head coach in Elliott Avent. It's interesting to me that Coach Avent and Coach Dave Van Horn at Arkansas, they've been coaching for a long time, both of them more than 30 years, and they've never faced each other before this weekend. Obviously, NC State is a program that's really molded in his image. What has he meant to this program, and can you just kind of tell us some about his program?
Oh, I mean, Coach Avent is an absolute legend in college baseball, and he will say that he inherited the program from Coach Esposito and Coach Tanner, and that is true. I mean, NC State has had a solid program for a long, long time, but what he's been able to do to be so consistent, ranked in the top 25, year in and year out, made the 2013 College World Series. He's done a tremendous job, and he's a coach that has been around 25 years here at NC State. He loves the university, I think, more than anybody. And he's a player's coach, and he loves his players, and his players love him. They play extremely hard for him. He's just one of the best in college baseball. And as you mentioned, Coach Van Horn is also a legend. I got the chance to talk to him a little bit when he was the college national team head coach here in our backyard in Cary back in 2014. And so this is it is really interesting. They hadn't faced each other, and these are two of the best coaches in college baseball history.
NC State's coming out of the Ruston Regional last weekend, and it's interesting that Louisiana Tech was the host team, but it seems like just about anybody I ask says that NC State was the team that was expected to win that regional, and they won 3 in a row, beat Alabama 8-1, and then beat Louisiana Tech a couple of times. What did you see during the regional from the Wolfpack?
I think they just played, the level of ball that they have been playing over the last several months. Just played very well. This is a very clean team defensively. They can hit, and that is, y'all played Louisiana Tech in a 3-game series this year. The Bulldogs can hit, but this Wolfpack team can hit as well, and that's what they were able to do in the regional, and they pitched it all right too. So it was, it was an all around regional and in a tough environment.
Andrew, if I've done my math correctly here, NC State is 17-3 on the road. What makes them such a good road team? Yeah,
that's right. 17-3 on the road. And so that's the funny thing. You brought up the slow start too, is that this team was sitting 1-8 in ACC play, and all 9 of those games had been at home. And you say, well, if this is how things are going at home, how are they going to be able to turn this around? But they swept North Carolina on the road and Boston College on the road, Pitt on the road. Obviously won all 3 games down there in Ruston. They have been, I think it's the veteran leadership of this team. It might also have to do, I don't know, maybe playing on the road has been easier this year because a lot of ballparks obviously had, limited capacity. I know that's not going to be a problem this weekend. What an atmosphere you guys have down there. So, this will certainly be the toughest road environment. Obviously, it's maybe the toughest in college baseball, but I think it's just the veteran leadership. There's a few guys back on this team. You've got 5th-year seniors, or you've got veteran guys, some of the better players on the team that probably would have been, or definitely would have been drafted if the draft wasn't shortened to 5 rounds. And so, like most teams in college baseball this year, they just have more experience than ever before. And I think that plays a big factor into being able to win on the road.
You've got a DH, Terrell Tatum, who has raised his batting average by, I think, about 100 points since somewhere around mid-March. Hitting real well, good base stealer. His dad played football for the Razorbacks, Terry Tatum, back in the 1980s for Lou Holtz and for Ken Hatfield. What kind of player can we expect out of Terrell Tatum?
Oh, he is first-team All-ACC designated hitter, and I couldn't be happier for him because he started quite a bit. He actually led the team in on-base percentage as a freshman, but he got injured in that season, and then it was just a crowded lineup, and he got opportunities, but he didn't really stick every day as he has been able to do this year. And to watch him kind of put everything together, because he's one of the most talented players that you'll see. I mean, he has all the tools, and he is going to hit for average, like you said. I think he hit close to 370 in ACC play. That's how he was able to raise his average, and he can bunt. He can beat out infield singles, and he can also drive the ball over the fence. So he can really do it all, and he's very exciting to watch.
And as I look through the roster, it seems like there's a lot of really good position players on this team. Johnny Butler, 389 batting average, 1141 OPS. Tyler McDonough, 351 average, 1103 OPS. And you go down the list, there's 5 players with double-digit home runs. It reminds me a lot of Arkansas's team in that there's a lot of power, but maybe a little bit better than the Razorbacks in that this team hits for average pretty well, one of the best teams as far as batting average left in the tournament.
Yeah, I think if you want to, I was kind of looking at this too. I think Arkansas definitely has a power advantage in the super regional. I would give NC State, the hit for contact, the hit for average advantage, and also the team speed advantage. and team defense. This has been a team that has been, top 3 or top 5 in fielding percentage in the NCAA all season long. So, I mean, it's a very well-rounded team, but, while NC State pitches well, I think, obviously the biggest reason Arkansas is number one, and they would be very highly ranked without Cops. But when you have that guy that can come in and just shut things down multiple times for multiple innings on a weekend, that's the X factor. And I would give Arkansas the bullpen advantage.
Yep, pretty crazy to watch Kevin Kopps pitch right now. It's we kind of run out of words to describe him. I wanted to ask you though, talking about position players, I was kind of surprised when I looked at the All ACC team and I did not see Luca Tresh on the All ACC team, because when you look at all of these draft ratings right now, this is a guy who might go in the first round of the draft next month. What's the disconnect between the potential and what you've seen on the field from him?
Yeah, I think coming into this season, the coaches felt like Luca Tresh is the best hitter on the team, and he has certainly got the most power on the team, but his batting average has not been nearly as high as they would have expected. And I think that's why that is one reason why he did not garner all ACC honors. The other thing is, I think the ACC by far has the best catchers in the country. There's just so many good ones. Whether it's Henry Davis at Louisville, or I like the freshman Kevin Prott at Georgia Tech. Adrian Del Castillo was coming in as everybody thought he was going to be a top 10 pick at Miami. There are so many good catchers in this league that it's very, very, very competitive at that position. But I'm getting long-winded with the answer. I think coming into the season, we had a first-round pick last year in Patrick Bailey. He went to the Giants from the catching position, and so I don't think scouts knew that Luka could hit. They didn't know necessarily just how good he was defensively. And I think that's the biggest thing that he proved to scouts this year. And when they saw that, he can throw and he can keep the ball in front, he can receive, he can handle the staff. They saw all those things from him. They said, well, we already knew this guy could hit. So even though the average really hasn't been where he's wanted it this year, he had already proved to scouts long ago he can really hit. And so when it's a defensive premium position, you supply that bat. That's why he's way up there on the draft rankings.
Andrew, from the typical Razorback fan that's listening to this, what can they expect from that NC State starters and from the bullpen?
Well, you don't have too many guys to keep track of. You're probably only going to see 5 this weekend. And it's been incredible that they have been able to get it done with such a depleted bullpen. But all 3 starters you're going to see are pretty similar. They're all going to be right-handed. They're going to throw anywhere from 88 to topping out at 94. You're not going to see anything too crazy in terms of velocity. The pitching coach, Coach Chrysler, really, really preaches to every guy. It's all about a bulldog mentality, and he wants guys to work fast. And they think that's probably a reason why the defense has been so good this year, is because they know that there's not going to be a lot of lulls. You always got to be on your toes, because these guys are going to get the ball and be ready to pitch and pound the strike zone. That's really what they pitch off of is pounding the strike zone. It's not going to be overpowering stuff. It's just going to be good stuff and going after hitters. And then coming out of the bullpen, you will see a little more velo, especially from Evan Justice, who was the Friday night ace. And once they moved him to the back end of the bullpen, he's got 10 saves. He'll throw it up there 96, 97 from the left side. He's got a funky delivery. He has been about as good as it gets out of the back end of the bullpen in college baseball down the stretch, because he can go for multiple innings. He won't go. Look, he's not going to go 6 or 7 innings, okay? But he will be able to go, say, 2 or 3 innings multiple times over the weekend, and that's a great weapon to have for them. And then Chris Villeman has developed as well as a guy that was very talented coming out of high school, and he's throwing about 94 from the left side. He has been lights out in his last several. He was the midweek starter. Now they're using him, not needing a 4th starter. They're using him out of the bullpen, and that's what you can expect. It's going to be three weekend starters, and then Justice and Villeman out of the bullpen, and that's it.
I wanted to go back to something you said earlier. you said that NC State hasn't seen anything close to the type of crowd they're going to see in Fayetteville this weekend. What have the crowds been like for their games this year?
Limited capacity at most ballparks. There's some that weren't letting really any fans in. In Raleigh, it was, a few hundred for most of the year. They were able to open it up towards the end of the season, and that was 1,700, I believe. In Ruston, they say it seats 2,100. I think they had more there last weekend, but the biggest crowd they played in was the ACC championship. In that tournament, at least 5,000 and up to 8,000, I believe. But yeah, it's going to be nothing like what they'll see this weekend, and that atmosphere is awesome, and honestly, just so great to see. As someone, I love college baseball, and to see it being supported to that level is just great.
I think that was part of I'm sure you've seen the home run video from Charlie Welch against Nebraska the other day. I think part of the reason that you saw such an emotion from the crowd is just because nobody's been in that type of environment for close to 2 years now. And
right.
it was like, whenever that happened, it was like people just kind of let loose for the first time in quite some time. I did want to ask you real quick, and we'll let you go after this one, on playing in front of a big crowd. Is this a young team? Is this an older team? Is it a team that has seen some of these crowds maybe in their past, in their career? How do you think they're going to handle that?
Yeah, real quick, I did see that video, and what an awesome video it was, because shout out to my buddy Steve Lennox, who had the home run call. I thought he had a great call on that one. And yeah, wow, just the outburst from the fans. And I think you're exactly right. It's just, haven't been able to have that kind of a moment in a couple of years, and just really cool. But to answer your question, this is a very veteran team. This is a team where most everyone will get drafted, and we'll have a very different looking team next year. A team with a ton of experience. You got to realize this year, it's pretty much been the same 9 guys in the field all year. And 5 pitchers have thrown 80% of the innings. And on top of that, most everyone is at least third year, but most fourth year guy. We got a lot of guys listed as juniors, but it's their 4th year. So this is a very, very veteran team. The only real young guys on the team that you will see play will be the Saturday starter, Sam Highfill, and the Sunday starter, Matt Willardson. They're both second-year freshmen, but obviously they didn't get a chance to pitch a ton last year. They were big-time arms last year, but in that shortened season, how much experience do you get? But they have been in the weekend rotation pretty much this entire season, and have pitched – on Saturday and Sunday, they pitched some of the biggest games. Sam has pitched in the ACC semifinal, and then the winner's bracket game to send him to the regional final. And Willardson got the start in the ACC championship game against Duke, pitched well, and also started the regional final game against Louisiana Tech to make it to the Super. So I think even those guys that are younger, they've got some experience, but when you got the hog call going and there's runners on base, I know it's going to be a stressful situation. So we'll see how they handle it. But I know they're just looking forward to playing in front of, a great fan base and in one of college baseball's best venues, and really looking forward to the challenge to playing the team that's been number 1 in the country pretty much all year, deservedly so.
Well, Andrew, we appreciate your time.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
Okay. Thank you, Andrew.
Massage Envy with clinics in Rogers and Fayetteville has been awarded Northwest Arkansas's Best Day Spa and Best Massage. One of the reasons is our care for athletes, both serious and recreational. We now offer rapid tension relief sessions using a high-caliber vibrating tool and total body stretch sessions like the ones used by the PGA. Both of these new services can be combined with the always popular deep muscle treatment. So whether you compete or just want to relax, there is no place better than Massage Envy.
WholeHogSports.com has the largest, most experienced staff of reporters covering sports in Arkansas. Football, basketball, baseball, recruiting, and more. You'll find it at WholeHogSports.com. The website includes up-to-minute news, daily commentaries, and award-winning photography from the staffs of Hogs Illustrated and the Democrat Gazette. For subscriptions, call 1-800-757-6277. That's 1-800-757-6277. Or visit us online today. WholeHogSports.com.
Welcome back to the WholeHog Baseball Podcast, presented by Massage Envy.
There have been 824 games played at Baum-Walker Stadium, and I think I've probably been there this is my 13th year to cover the team, and I'd been to some games before then, so I'm thinking I've probably been to about half, maybe 40% to 50% of the games. I cannot remember a game with a louder moment than when Charlie Welch hit the home run against Nebraska that basically sealed their regional victory on Monday night. And I'm talking about, I've been there for some big moments. The James McCann home run was, this really loud moment. There have been some loud moments this year in the Florida series because that was such a big series for them to clinch the SEC championship, including when Charlie Welch had his walk-off hit in Game 2. But that was an incredibly loud moment. It was a great atmosphere throughout the weekend. And, I thought it made a difference for Arkansas when they played Nebraska. Nebraska hadn't played in front of a crowd like that. Their players were talking about they hadn't played in front of more than 200 or 300 people on the road all season, and now all of a sudden you're playing in front of what's listed at 11,000, but it looks like there might be more than that there. I mean, these look like crowds that are on par with the 2015 Super Regional against Missouri State, and those crowds were listed at in the 12,000 range. They're listing 11,084 for every game this year, and I think that's just based on, I don't know, but that's just what the figure is going to be for every game they play. And I think for NC State, when they come in here this weekend too, they haven't seen anything like this. And we talked about this, Seth, a couple of weeks ago. It is such a huge advantage for Arkansas to be playing these games at home, to not have the attendance capacity the capacity limits. And it's hard for me to envision any team that's going to come in here and be able to beat Arkansas 2 of 3.
And I think the best reason why is the fact that Arkansas hasn't done it all year long and lost 2 out of 3. But when you have a crowd that gives you that extra momentum, in football, you'd basically call it the intangibles. And the crowd helps you in those intangibles. And man, it was loud. I wasn't there for that Monday night game. Scotty Bordelon, who's going to join us, was there, and he'll give us his insight. But man, that was a fantastic game, a fantastic weekend. You never necessarily want to have to go through all 8 games in a super regional. 7. Wait, did I do the math wrong there? No,
well, I know what you're saying. You could go 5 games in a regional and 3 games in a super regional, which would be as many as 8 games.
Yes, sorry, thank you. But you got to play all the games in the regional. The fans showed up even when you were playing at 2 p.m. on a Friday. The fans were there, and then you just kind of take a look around at the other venues. ESPN, not to do a plug, but they do that cool thing called Squeeze Play that pulls up all the other venues and takes you to games. There was really not another atmosphere like what was happening at Baum. Yes, Ole Miss has a lot of fans, and Mississippi State has a lot of fans. But then you also had other games, like as soon as South Carolina was out of that Columbia regional, there was 6 people cheering on Virginia playing Old Dominion.
Mm-hmm. Wait till Virginia plays Dallas Baptist there this weekend.
Yeah, there's going to be nobody there. So this is good for college baseball, and man, Matt, it is a whole heck of a lot of fun.
Yeah, you mentioned Mississippi State and Ole Miss. They played Monday games, and their crowds were nothing like what they had in Fayetteville. You also mentioned they haven't lost 2 of 3 this year. They haven't lost 2 of 3 since 2019. The Texas A&M series in the 2019 regular season, that was the last time that they lost 2 of 3 to any opponent. You count the regional they just played against Nebraska, and you count the regional against TCU and the super regional against Ole Miss 2 years ago, they've won 19 consecutive series going into this series with North Carolina State.
Yes, I think the crazy thing about the game on Monday was just, especially in the 8th inning, is just how it got to that point, right? So who were the first 2 batters in the inning? I think it was Caden Wallace.
And Brady Slavens. Those 2 guys both struck out, I believe. Now, Slavens grounded out. That's whenever he came up lame, running toward first.
So 2 quick outs. And as Bob Holt noted multiple times in the post-game Zoom, you're kind of thinking this thing's going to go tie it into the 9th inning.
Mm-hmm.
And then Christian Franklin draws a walk on a terrific at-bat, really terrific at-bat. And then, Nebraska pitchers just couldn't find the strike zone.
Yeah.
And the craziest thing to me is just how Charlie Welch, even though Nebraska pitchers had thrown, I think, 11 straight balls, he was looking at the pitcher, and he was like, if I get a pitch here, I'm going to drill it. And the first pitch that found any part of the plate in 12 pitches got sent to the parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it says a lot about Charlie Welch that, even though Nebraska pitchers, couldn't find the zone to kind of save their lives at that point, he kind of grooved him a fastball. And Dave Van Horn, even though I think that kind of tells you how much trust he has in Charlie Welch as a pinch hitter, Charlie Welch turned around after the go-ahead run scored, looking to Dave Van Horn for a sign, and he's expecting Dave to give him the take sign because they haven't, like I said, haven't found the zone in a while. And Dave just kind of, with two hands, just kind of motions swing away.
Mm-hmm.
And then split second later, that ball's over the fence, and Charlie Welch is kind of floating around the bases. It was an incredible moment because after the go-ahead run scored, Arkansas fans started calling the Hogs, and as soon as the fans' arms go up the first time, you hear the crack of the bat,
Mm-hmm.
and then the ball is just kind of floating through the air, and then the place just kind of gets delirious. It
Yeah.
was a pretty incredible sequence.
And it was a sustained roar for like probably 2 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
From the time that Franklin scored on the wild pitch, and even before Franklin scored, I think that the crowd could tell that they were affecting the Nebraska pitchers not being able to throw a strike, and it's so uncharacteristic of Nebraska. They walked Arkansas 10 times in the Game 2 loss. They walked them 5 times in Arkansas's fourth game of the regional. I guess Game 1 of the Arkansas-Nebraska, 10 walks. Didn't walk a lot during the second game. Game 3, when they played, they walked them 5 times. Going back to what you said, Scotty, about Van Horn giving the take sign, I think that's a mark of a coach who understands baseball. That you just had a pitcher who threw one in the dirt, just came out of the bullpen. Now all of a sudden he's frustrated. He's going to leave one over the plate trying to get a strike. And Charlie Welch was waiting on it, and I thought that was a really great coaching job by Van Horn.
What I've heard it be referred to as is when you're sitting 2-0 or ahead in the count, a hit box. So you've got a small box, and you're looking for a ball in that box.
Anything in that area.
And if it's not in that area, even if it's a strike, you don't swing at it. But you are looking and you're geared up, and you are sitting on one pitch in that area. And if it comes, you're hitting it a mile, and Charlie Welch did just that. When you look at this team now, guys, I don't think it's so weird to think about, but I don't think that you can put Charlie Welch in the lineup now. I mean, he did good. Don't get me wrong. He was in the lineup for the majority of the Super Regional for the regional until that last game. But he is such a weapon off of the bench that I just don't think that you can use him. I think that you go with the lineup that's won you the most games all year long.
And that's what they did in the last game in Nebraska. I mean, that Zach Gregory, when was the last time Zach Gregory had played?
He didn't play all regional.
I don't think he had played very much in Hoover either. Because they did some things with their outfield where they put Goodhart in right field and played Ethan Bates. And
Gregory, I think, had a double down the left field line. What was it in the second game against Nebraska?
Did he?
So I think that would have been Sunday night. And then I think he got stranded out there. But yeah, he didn't play all that much.
Well, maybe I forget. They played so many outfielders lately. But the point being that Gregory had not played a whole lot. Even at the end of the regular season, they were going with Braden Webb more than they were going with Zach Gregory. But what they did, they went back to a lineup that had been kind of their bread and butter when they were playing the best throughout the season, which included Gregory playing left field, Matt Goodhart at DH, and it worked for him the other day. And I agree with you about Charlie Welch. He reminds me of the dugouts version of Kevin Kopps. So you got Kopps that comes in at the back end as a relief pitcher, and you've got Charlie Welch who comes in as a pinch hitter. And that combination has been incredibly, incredibly good for them at the end of games this season. How many games have they won this year because either Kopps came in and pitched brilliantly for them for 2, 3, 4 innings, or because Charlie Welch had a big hit for them late in games? You could probably say that they've won 49 games. I bet you could say half of their games have included one of the two of them having a big moment late.
Charlie Welch kind of reminds me, this isn't a totally apples to apples comparison, but Matt Carpenter, I follow Derek Gould, who covers the Cardinals as well as anybody for the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. I was reading one of his tweets earlier this week that Matt Carpenter for his career is about a 500 hitter with the bases loaded. And Charlie Welch, I don't know, what is he? We came up with his numbers the other day.
He's 8 for 12 as a pinch hitter.
8 for 12 as a pinch hitter. I mean, obviously you can do better than that, but like realistically, I just don't think is going to happen. Like those two, like I said, not completely comparable, but what Charlie Welch is doing is pretty remarkable. And I was at the second game of the Florida series, and got a couple tickets into the hog pen, and until that point I had not heard Baum Walker as loud as it was as when Charlie Welch sent that ball in the outfield to clinch the SEC championship. He's been awesome.
Great story from Clay Henry today too about how he's getting his home run ball back.
That was really
from
cool.
The people who got
really cool.
Yeah, they're getting a nice trade off too. They're going to get an autographed Dave Van Horn bat. They're going to get autographed baseballs from the entire team, and they're going to get tickets to the Super Regional. Not a bad trade off for giving a ball back.
Yeah, I probably would make that trade. The tickets to the Super Regional might be some of the biggest. Those are impossible to get if you're not a season ticket holder.
They become more impossible every year, and it's an interesting discussion that I think they're going to have at some point. Is do you expand Baum Stadium to include more seats, because you can fill it up for these games? There's no doubt in my mind that if Baum, they're counting 11,000 people there right now. They have 13,000 seats. They're going to sell 13,000 seats for a regional, super regional. But at the same time, you have to look at it from the standpoint of supply and demand, making money off of. And so I don't think they're going to expand Baum at any time soon. I think they could, but I think what they've got right now is a really nice thing. But yeah, I do hate it for a lot of people, because there are a lot of people who are able to, who come to a lot of baseball games. Say they live an hour away, it's only feasible for them to come, say, on the weekends. And so they don't have season tickets. And they're shut out whenever it gets to this point a lot of times in the postseason and can't get tickets. That is an unfortunate deal, because there are a lot of people who are wanting tickets. And the ticket prices that you see on the secondary market right now is a reflection of that. These prices are
hog pen tickets are going for $200+ right now,
and you got to wait in line to get even a seat that you probably won't even see the game. Like I've sat in the back of the hog pen a few times, guys. Those are not great seats,
right?
You're not, if you are not in the first 10 to 15 rows where it's kind of slanted a little bit up, you're not going to see the game. And there are people that are out there, like where the grills are. If you're by the grills, you're there to grill, because you're not watching the game. Something that I've thought about, that I think that you've even said, Matt, maybe to just me, I don't think on the podcast, but when the time comes when COVID really is in the rearview mirror, opening up the new expansion that they did for standing room only seats, it looks like they could do that for like a general admission. You go up there and you could add probably over 100 people to just standing room up on that rail.
Yeah, from what I've heard, I think that's going to be more official guests, if you will. And I'm not talking necessarily just recruits, but people who are guests of coaching staffs, athletic department officials, things of that nature. I don't know that those are going to be opened up to the public. Maybe they haven't decided yet what that's going to look like.
Well, that also makes sense, because you got a lot of important stuff behind those doors that lead to the locker room, that lead to the weight room, that lead to player development stuff. And you don't just want to let Joe Schmo in there that could maybe sneak in and mess something up.
The tough thing about Baum right now is, if you were going to expand it, where would you expand it to?
Yeah.
Really the place left to expand, unless you add another level onto the stadium, which, who knows? Maybe that happens one day. But unless you add another level onto the stadium, the only place to expand is left field. And they don't want to lose that element of the game day atmosphere. And so it's interesting. It seems like, unless it's one of those things, you talk about, when cities are growing, sometimes you run out of room, and so you have to start building up.
Yeah.
And I think we're kind of at that point with the baseball park, because there's not a lot of room left out there to build.
It'll be interesting. You just can't build them right, can you? Obviously, you got the new expansion, and then you'd have to get rid of the scoreboard if you want, and remove it somewhere else if you wanted to put anything there, and that's just not happening right now. Like you said, if the demand is there, they might go and fix the supply if it's there for a long time. But for right now, there's also a mystique and a presence and an atmosphere that's built into Baum Walker that you don't want to lose.
The thing you don't want to do when you are building a new facility or expanding something, you don't want to overbuild.
Yeah.
They overbuilt Bud Walton Arena in 1993. That was during the era when, bigger is better. I mean, Thompson Boiling was built, I think, about 6 years before that, had about 24,000 seats. Rupp Arena, 24,000 seats, something like that. Bud Walton's got about 20. And what happened was that, when the golden age of Razorback basketball ended, there were a lot of empty seats left that people didn't want. Now, you couldn't have foreseen, all the different, TV factors and whatnot that have affected attendance over the last 10, 15 years. But you don't want to overbuild something so that whenever this golden age does end, that you've got X number of seats that are empty for ball games. And that's why I think you're going to see Bud Walton Arena, by the way, I think that it's coming. We've heard Hunter Yurachek reference this, that they're looking into, potentially renovating Bud Walton somewhere down the road. I think when they renovate it, you're going to see seats taken out, like you've seen at Tennessee, like you've seen at Rupp Arena. And, it's probably going to be more of an intimate 15, 16,000 type seat that has a lot more premium seating areas.
Because you can make just as much money.
Yep, exactly. So you don't want to overbuild Baum. And so, I can't see them doing that, anytime soon.
I mean,
a renovation on that scale.
They basically overbuilt Donald W. too. I mean, they enclosed the end zone, and then all of a sudden nobody's showing up. Well, I mean, and those are different seats. I get that, because those are the premium seats that people use, and sometimes we're not even at their seats watching the game because they can be in an indoor club. But yeah, the good old football team didn't help them out much with that, did they?
I've been trying to make it through a baseball podcast without talking about Kevin Kopps, but I don't know that you can.
Nah.
I mean, because he is the team right now. And that's not to say that, he's the only person doing anything for him. Obviously he has to have run support, but he's the team right now. It reminds me so much, and Seth, we talked about this before, of like the football teams when Darren McFadden was on the football team. It's like he was the team. You snap it to him, you let him run it, you let him throw it. Sometimes he's catching the ball out of the backfield. But, it's like you want the ball touching his hand on every play in some way. And it's kind of the same way right now with Kopps. You want the ball in his hand, late in these close games. And I was just floored at not only how long he was able to pitch in the final game of the Nebraska regional, but how well he pitched. I thought he got better. And he said he thinks he gets better the more he throws. But he got better. And I thought it was the best he pitched not only that weekend, that may have been the best game he's pitched in, I don't know.
Whenever I think about his dominance, probably the 6 batters, 6 strikeouts
against Carolina
is something that is just super stands out to me. But when he came in the game, my main thought was he's not going to finish this, right? But there was just this little spot in the back of my head that was like, if Arkansas needs him to finish this, they're not taking Kopps out.
Right.
And it just so happened that Arkansas couldn't get the lead and take a big lead, and so that you felt comfortable taking Kopps out. And my man's got a rubber arm to just continue to throw.
Which inning was it that he sat Nebraska down on like 7 or 8 pitches?
I think it was the 6th inning.
6th inning? That's when I knew he was going to finish it, because he threw less than 10 pitches, barely exerted any energy, and I feel like that kind of was deflating in a way for Nebraska. And I feel like he bought himself at least another inning with that.
The efficiency, I wrote this the other night. I think it was like an 8-pitch 6th, a 13-pitch 7th, and a 10-pitch 8th. And so you're talking about, what is that, roughly 30 pitches over 3 innings? That's incredible.
Yep.
Especially that late in the game, because that's whenever pitchers are typically having to throw 20, 30 pitches an inning because their arm is tiring out.
He just he very rarely ever truly labors.
Yeah.
And you just don't see guys that don't do that. It's insane to me.
I looked at the timestamps on Twitter and found that I think it was like an hour and 14 minutes that Nebraska went without a base runner late in that game. And so, it's one thing to look at it from an inning perspective, but when you look at it from, an actual time perspective, an hour and 14 minutes of a game that lasted 2 hours and 25 minutes. I mean, how demoralizing is that in that dugout, and how desperate are you becoming? We've talked about this before. That pitch that he throws, that is a really, really serious weapon against desperate hitters, because if you go up there and you're desperate and you're trying to swing away at that thing, good luck.
Yeah, Nebraska's lineup probably had to feel like it was literally just going through the motions. Like, we're just going to send these 3 guys this inning, and then the next inning we send these next 3 guys. That had to be just very, very deflating to just not be able to turn anything around on him.
I'm interested to see how well Kops can throw during the Super Regional, because I'm sure his arm is got to be really sore right now.
Yeah.
But the way they've been playing, they need him late in games. I think this is going to be a Super Regional, guys, as we kind of turn the page to NC State. I think it could be a really high-scoring Super Regional. North Carolina State does not throw a lot of pitchers, and their pitching hasn't been very good. Basically, you can kind of look at NC State, maybe the way people view Arkansas is that there's one really consistent starter and there's a consistent relief pitcher. But otherwise, the consistency hasn't really been there with that pitching staff. I think their ERA is somewhere over 4, maybe well over 4, but they can score. And so I think it could be one of those weeks. By the way, you look at the weather this weekend, it's going to be 3 of those really hot mid-June type days in Fayetteville. And those are the types of days where you see the wind really blowing out to left. I just feel like this could be a couple of games where you're looking at maybe like a 10-8 final score, 12-8 final score, something like that, where these two offenses could really get after each other.
I'll be interested. Is this going to be one of those series that has Arkansas, like you said, scoring a lot of runs? But, the past 2 times Arkansas has hosted a Super Regional, basically all the games have been blowouts.
They've all played out almost. It was so weird how the 2019 Super Regional played out like the 2018 Super Regional, in that Arkansas won comfortably game 1. They lost game 2 when they didn't play very well, and then they just blew the doors off their opponent in game 3. They beat South Carolina 14-4, and they beat Ole Miss 14-1.
Right.
In 19. And both of those game 3s, they felt like about 3-hour-long parties, because you knew pretty early in the game that this one's in the bag. And, so, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that NC State series plays out. NC State, they have not been in a situation like this. I mean, you're talking about guys like Casey Opitz and Kevin Kops and Caleb Bolden and Zebulon Vermillion, if he's able to play this week. And, you go on and on down the list. These are guys who have played in Super Regionals before, who have been in the College World Series before. NC State hasn't been in a Super Regional since 2013. And that was the last time they went to the College World Series. And so I think that you couple that with the fact that I think Arkansas came out of a much, much tougher regional. The final game in Nebraska felt like game 3 of a Super Regional to me. It felt like whoever's winning that is going to Omaha, because those teams were so good, and it was such a hard-fought regional. NC State didn't experience that whenever they played at Louisiana Tech last week. Combination of Arkansas's experience, collectively in their career, but also the experience that they just had last week, the whole iron sharpens iron type deal. I feel like Arkansas is the favorite this weekend. I'd be really surprised if NC State can come in here and beat them.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you think this might turn into a high-scoring Super Regional. In terms of like Arkansas's bullpen, who are you looking for more out of?
Well, I think Caden Monk is the first name.
That's who I was going to say,
because he hadn't thrown strikes.
Right. I remember Dave saying that he was a bit wild in Hoover, and then we didn't see him just a whole lot last weekend.
Yeah, in Hoover he threw 39 pitches and 26 of them were for balls.
Right.
And then last weekend he didn't pitch very well when he got the chance against NJIT. He got up and was warming up, loosening up, I guess, if you will, in the game against Nebraska, the final game against Nebraska, but he never came into the game. Did he come into any of the other games against Nebraska? I don't remember him coming in.
I don't think so.
I don't think he did. So that's the first guy, because there toward the end of the season, it was Kops, but it was also Monk was pitching really well out of the bullpen. Connor Noland, he didn't pitch very well in the one time we saw him against NJIT. He did get him out of that jam early in the game, but then he also gave up some runs in the next inning. He'd been really good up until that point. The whole pitching staff had been good up until that point.
Nolan was solid on Sunday too.
Yeah, that's right. But before NJIT, They hadn't given up more than 4 earned runs in a game in 8 games. And I guess really, if you look at it in the regional, NJIT was the only time they gave up more than 4 runs. So, but it was also the Kevin Kopp show for, 11 of those innings over the final 3 games. I'd say it's everybody. I thought Lyle Lockhart pitched pretty well, the other day. It's so weird in Lockhart's games, though. It just seems like he gets no run support.
Yeah.
It's every time he's on the mound, there is no run support for that guy. I shouldn't say every time, but very few times there's not a lot of run support. He did get run support against Georgia. But how many times have you seen games, where he's pitched into the 5th inning of a scoreless game? I think it's happened like 4 times this year. I guess to answer your question, everybody.
But
yeah.
Caden Monk kind of tops the list.
Yeah. When we come back, we are going to look around the SEC. Lots of news in the conference this week with teams in the Super Regionals and coaching news. That and more when we come back on the WholeHog Baseball Podcast presented by Massage Envy.
Want more coverage of your home team? Download the WholeHog Sports Video on Demand app. Check out the Fan Zone and get up-to-the-minute videos, podcasts, and features on football, basketball, baseball, recruiting, and more. Search for WholeHog Sports on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire at home. And take it with you on the go by downloading it for your mobile device in your app store. The WholeHog Sports Video on Demand app. Get it today. Massage Envy with clinics in Rogers and Fayetteville has been awarded Northwest Arkansas's Best Day Spa and Best Massage. One of the reasons is our care for athletes, both serious and recreational. We now offer rapid tension relief sessions using a high-caliber vibrating tool and total body stretch sessions like the ones used by the PGA. Both of these new services can be combined with the always popular deep muscle treatment. So whether you compete or just want to relax, there is no place better than Massage Envy. Welcome back to the WholeHog Baseball Podcast. Let's take a look at the week ahead, presented by Grease Pig.
The week ahead is brought to you by the Grease Pig. For 20 years, they have specialized in serving UA students, faculty, and staff with 2 locations in Fayetteville on College Avenue and MLK Boulevard. The Grease Pig has experience for all your repair needs and, of course, complete service oil changes, staffed with ASE certified master technicians. They also provide tires and alignment services at their location on College Avenue. The Grease Pig, it's all about taking care of you, and they're a proud sponsor of the week ahead. A lot of news around the SEC this week. Got 6 teams in the Super Regionals. LSU is going to play Tennessee in a Super Regional, and then the other ones, of course, Arkansas, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, and Vanderbilt. And it's kind of interesting to me, guys, that you've got 16 teams in the Super Regionals. 4 of them are from the SEC West, and I think that kind of shows you, where the importance in baseball lies. I mean, you're going to have a hard time finding any school that's going to pour more resources into baseball than Arkansas, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, or LSU. And it's not always this way, but it feels to me like the teams that are putting resources into baseball, they're the teams who are winning at this time of year.
Yeah, I agree, Matt. The teams that seem to care the most about it are the teams that are indeed winning. And I'm intrigued by that LSU and Tennessee matchup.
Same. That's the one that I'm definitely going to keep an eye on. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I think that you said it best, and in that LSU's going on a wild ride with Paul Maneri, one last ride here.
Yep.
It's going to be interesting to see. And, there's really, for an Arkansas fans, that's picking between 2 very, very, at least in this season, 2 big evils in their eyes between the Tennessee program and the LSU program. So that'll be an interesting series to play out. But for me in this cycle, it's been kind of strange. Growing up in Arkansas and growing up a person that followed Arkansas baseball in the SEC, you almost like the whole SEC pride thing, chanting SEC and all that kind of stuff. I don't know that there's any part of me, at least, and I think I've talked to a few people that are this way, that want any SEC teams to advance. And for me, just thinking about it from a perspective of Arkansas baseball, the teams that have seen Cops more, I don't want to play them. I want teams that have seen Cops the least in order to play them, because even if you think about Tennessee, the 3rd time that they saw him in the 7th, 8th, and 9th innings in the that they saw him in the SEC championship game. They put better swings on against him than some other teams that we've seen. So I'm thinking that you want to play fresh teams no matter who it is. But yes, the SEC dominant, 4 teams from the West, 2 teams from the East, and really an impressive showing.
Nebraska saw Cops for 11 innings, and it didn't seem to help them toward the end.
That's valid.
There's a flip side to this, guys, that Cops sees the batters, and he figures out things about them and what works against them. Going back to LSU, Tennessee, it feels to me like this Paul Maneri story is a little bit like Mike Martin 2 years ago whenever he retired at Florida State.
Yes.
And in that instance, it actually hurt Arkansas because Florida State was on the same side of the bracket, and they played the first game at the College World Series that year. With LSU, Tennessee, they're on the opposite side of the bracket. If Arkansas was to see either of those teams, it would be in the National Championship Series. It's interesting to me, though, you've got Paul Maneri, who's been in a ton of Super Regionals, been to the World Series a number of times. Tony Vitello, this is his first time coaching the Super Regional. And I really feel like this time of year that coaching experience matters. How you deal with your team, how you approach the games, how you manage the games. Those things matter. And sometimes the best team, they don't win. I think about 2015, Missouri State was the number 8 national seed, and they had to come down here, and it really, it sucked for them, and I get it. But they were not the worst team that year, but Arkansas beat them in the Super Regional. I could see the same thing potentially happening in an LSU and Tennessee.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when we were watching the selection show on Memorial Day, and you see LSU's name pop up, like it just, LSU's not the LSU that they have been in the past, but you give those dudes a chance, give them a fighting chance. What did they win? 3 straight games? 3 or 4 straight games?
They won 4 straight because they lost the opener.
Yeah. I mean, backs against the wall, playing for their coach, and I don't know what it is. I guess it's just kind of some Cajun Bayou voodoo magic thing that they got going on, but I just had a feeling that LSU was going to get out of that regional, and then to win that regional the way that they did. What was the go-ahead score? Came across, I think it was maybe in the bottom of the 8th inning on a balk. Yeah, that was pretty crazy. And then, I think the top of the 9th inning when LSU was trying to put Oregon away, it wasn't easy. It was really, really high drama, but LSU, I just feel like LSU, man, it's just kind of something about their program. They just find ways to pull games out like that, and I just feel like you can never count them out.
They're a good postseason team. It reminds me of, 2014 maybe, when Kentucky was the 8th seed in the NCAA basketball tournament, and they beat Wichita State, and I think Wichita State might have been undefeated at that point.
Yes.
Yeah, one seed, I think.
Yeah, and so, and I think that Kentucky team made it all the way to the national championship game before they lost to UConn. So I think that, again, there's a mystique there. There is coaching experience, and the know-how at this time of year. And I could see LSU, potentially making a run here against a Tennessee team that beat them in the regular season. And so there's some motivation on LSU's part to go back up there to Knoxville and redeem themselves for some games they thought they should have won.
I do like Tennessee in that series, though, but I think LSU is going to make it very, very difficult.
A series that I'm interested in, too, that involves another SEC team is that Mississippi State Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
Notre Dame cruised through their regional,
right,
setting scoring records. The ball was flying out of South Bend.
They won one game 26-3.
So going down to Starkville is going to be a completely different atmosphere for them. So I'm interested to see how they handle that. But they looked the part the first week.
It's not a whole lot different than what NC State's coming into here because Notre Dame played in the ACC,
right,
and they played in front of very limited capacity. I think Notre Dame is still doing a thing where only their students can get into the games.
Wow.
So
there's going to be
contrast
15,
that
000.
against going to Duty Noble this weekend.
Yeah.
So that the Mississippi State, Notre Dame, and LSU Tennessee series, that's on the other side of the bracket, as is DBU Virginia and Texas South Florida. On Arkansas side of the bracket, the regional, the other super regional really to watch is Stanford and Texas Tech. That's in Lubbock because the winner of that super regional will play the winner of Arkansas NC State in Omaha in the first game. Now I don't know if that's going to be the first game Saturday, the first game Sunday, second game. I'm not quite sure. They haven't got the schedule out for the College World Series yet. Based on the way they've done the brackets this year, my inclination is to believe that The teams on Arkansas's side of the bracket are going to play the Saturday game in Omaha, but again, they haven't given a schedule for that. But Texas Tech and Stanford, and then on the bottom half of that side of the bracket, you've got a couple of super regionals that involve SEC teams. You've got Ole Miss going to Tucson to play Arizona. That should be a really high-scoring super regional, I would believe. And then one that I'm really interested, guys, in is East Carolina at Vanderbilt. In my opinion, East Carolina could have been a top 8 seed in hosting this week. Cliff Godwin, he's their coach. That's his alma mater. Very good coach. I mean, he was an assistant at LSU. He was an assistant at Ole Miss, has been part of really good programs. And there's this continuing narrative that East Carolina is the team that has been to the NCAA tournament the most times without a College World Series appearance. And Vanderbilt, to me, even though they've been really good, for most of this year, that's a team that's built around Kumar Rocker and Jack Leiter. And, when those two aren't pitching very well, their games can get really sideways in a hurry. That's a really interesting regional for me, or super regional.
If I'm East Carolina, the motto for me, or if I'm a coach, I may not say this to the players, but I'm trying to win one. Just win one of those first 2 games, because you got to feel really good going into that third game.
Game 3, yeah.
Because, Vanderbilt even showed it against Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech was hanging in there in that game, and honestly, with the tying home run hit in the 9th inning, almost felt like they should have won, but Vanderbilt's offense came through. But man, that team with Vanderbilt is so reliant on Kumar Rocker and Jack Leiter. Now, don't get me wrong, they're probably the 2 best starters in the entire college baseball. But beyond that, the Vanderbilt bullpen is shaky.
Yeah, I was about to say that. Matt was telling me that a few weeks ago. And so,
you think Game 3 at Arkansas is an adventure? Try watching Game 3 with Vanderbilt this year. It has been really interesting. I don't know what the pitching matchups are going to be, but if it turns out that both of these teams throw their ace in Game 1, that's an incredible pitching matchup. Everybody knows about Kumar Rocker. East Carolina has Gavin Williams. He's 10-0 this year, 1.32 ERA, and teams bat 176 against him.
Mercy.
Those are 2 All-America pitchers going up against each other potentially in Game 1. Maybe 2 All-America pitchers in Game 2 if it's Leiter against Williams.
I think that you throw against Rocker, your best pitcher against Rocker. I think he's the more beatable one, don't you? Not that either one of them is easy, but
they've taken turns this year being inconsistent.
But so then just think about the storylines, though, from this side of Arkansas's bracket. If they do indeed advance to the College World Series, you could have a Texas Tech team, which no love lost between those 2 teams. They met in the College World Series the past 2 times. Both of them have gone.
And this year.
And they've already met this year and had a nice little conversation after the game between the 2 teams. So no love lost between there. Ole Miss, obviously we know the animosity almost between Arkansas fans and Ole Miss fans.
They'll make a great TikTok if they get to Omaha.
Oh, dang.
There will be plenty of TikToks to be made.
Well, let's just be real, though. They haven't made Omaha since when? One time?
They made one time under Bianco. In Oxford, the saying is Omaha is an acronym for Ole Miss at home again.
Yeah, so we'll see about that. And then, Vanderbilt, luckily or unluckily, I don't know, you wouldn't play them till the second game, but man, that all of those matchups, there could be storylines up and down if those 4 teams are the teams that go through to the College World Series.
Speaking of storylines, the other reason we wanted to do an Around the SEC is because of the coaching news this week. At Texas A&M, they've hired Jim Schlossnagle from TCU, 18 years at TCU. He went to 5 College World Series. I think they went to 2 or 3 other super regionals. They had a run from 2009 to 2017 where they were in Omaha 5 times and they lost in the super regional 2 other times. During those 9 years, there was not 2 programs that was any more dominant than TCU. They were, spitting out great pitchers every single year. It's an interesting hire because he knows the lay of the land. He's going to be recruiting the same areas for the Aggies that he's been recruiting for TCU. It's a different kind of recruiting because I think recruiting at a private school, there are some people would say it's easier to recruit at private schools, but I've also heard people at TCU say that they're not recruiting like Stanford does or like Vanderbilt does, where you have some of those programs in place that's able to supplement your 11.7. And so it's different going from a private to a public school like he's going to be. But my thought with A&M is that Houston baseball is as good as you're going to find. Look at the guys at Arkansas from Houston. Kevin Kopps, That's the environment that he came out of. And I know he wasn't pitching like this when he was there, but the point remains the same. It's a hotbed for baseball talent, and now you're putting a coach who has a World Series pedigree inside that realm. And I would, if he can recapture the magic that he had at TCU about 4 or 5 years ago, there's no doubt in my mind that A&M can be challenging Arkansas and the Mississippi schools and LSU in the SEC West.
The SEC is not getting any easier, is it, gentlemen?
In my opinion, you put Schlossnagle, we'll see what LSU does to replace Maneri, but you put Schlossnagle in the West right now, he's the second best coach in the division behind Dave Van Horn. I think he's better coach than Bianco. I think there's a lot of coaches better than Lemonis, to be honest with you. And that's not to take anything away from Lemonis necessarily, but I just think he stepped into a really good situation at Starkville, and I don't know that he's really proven himself yet. So maybe better coach isn't the right word, but I still think I think unproven is maybe the right term. Schlossnagle's an incredible coach, and I think for him to do at TCU what he did, that program was nothing before he got there. And now it's a brand name program in baseball.
You don't want to see TCU. Like, they are a top tier program that you can face. I don't know what to make of the SEC West, because now you do have Schlossnagle at A&M. Like, there is no easy team on your schedule week in and week out. And it was really like that this year anyway, but A&M, or historically kind of like that, but A&M fell off this year.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting. And then the LSU news that they might keyword there, hire Pat Casey, former Oregon State. I don't necessarily know if that's a good hire. I thought the old Sullivan hire would have been more kind of up their alley, but that'll be an interesting division. And want to talk about no love lost between Arkansas and LSU. If they hire Pat Casey, that's taking it up a notch again.
Well, I don't think it's necessarily between the coaches. I think there's a lot of admiration and respect between Dave and Pat Casey.
Right.
But I understand what you're saying because of the World Series a few years ago, and Kendall Rogers is the one who's reported this, that he's the front runner at LSU. He's also reported that Kevin O'Sullivan backed out of that job, and a lot of people thought O'Sullivan would take that job just because you saw Florida's regional, and I know they didn't play well, but in game 2, it's their most important game of the year. They've already lost. They're in the losers bracket. They're playing in a 5,000 seat brand new stadium. This is a program that's been really good, been to the World Series 7 times under O'Sullivan, won it national championship 4 years ago. They can't come close to filling up 5,000 seats for their most important game of the year in the postseason at a brand new stadium.
Yeah.
That has like this overhang because people were complaining about sitting out in the sun. And ceiling fans. It's they've done everything they can to try to accommodate their fan base, and their fan base still doesn't want to come out and watch them. And so, it's not going to be LSU this time. But I think at some point, somewhere down the road, a blue blood is going to come along, and they're going to get Kevin O'Sullivan to leave Florida because of the lack of support for that program. But going back to Pat Casey, if he ends up at LSU, that's a very weird hire to me. And I think the success that he will have there is ultimately going to be determined by who he hires as his assistant coaches. Because from what I can tell, Pat Casey has never coached out of the Pacific Northwest. And, he doesn't recruit the areas of Louisiana and East Texas and the Gulf that, LSU's players predominantly come from. I'm pretty sure that at Oregon State, they played a brand of West Coast baseball, small ball, that is not going to be very popular in Baton Rouge. And then you also, you look at how long it took him to build Oregon State into he was at Oregon State for a lot of years before they, became a player on the national scene. You're stepping into a much better situation at LSU, obviously. But
it's a pressure cooker down there.
It is a pressure cooker. And at his age, you just wonder, is he all in for this type of job? And so if they hire him, that's a very, very weird move to me for LSU. You would think that LSU would go try to hire someone, and I don't think Tony Vitello was ever going there, but like a Tony Vitello, who's got a much longer career arc than a Pat Casey has right now. When I heard Pat Casey's name for LSU, I was really kind of taken aback by it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't know that he vibes with LSU. That was a very 21st century.
That's
saying
all right. I
for
liked
me.
it.
But I really don't. Did he ever really give off a Cajun vibe with? I mean, not necessarily like Cajun.
Well, I mean,
I'm backtracking here for a second. He
Paul
didn't feel like
Mainieri-
he fits in.
Paul Mainieri came from a similar background. I mean, Paul Mainieri had not been in the South. Paul Mainieri had been at Air Force, and he had been at Notre Dame. And he went to LSU, and he did fine.
They didn't like him after he won the national title. Everything's just kind of been slowly going downhill, though.
Well,
Would you want to go back to that?
I'd say for the last 4 years they have been.
Yeah.
Pat Casey's never had gumbo or boudin before. That's a prereq.
See,
But the difference in Paul Mainieri and Pat Casey is that when Paul Mainieri went there, he was like 50 years old.
Yeah.
And still had a lot of his career left to go. And there's a big difference.
You know, I just big difference in Coach O. They just hired Kim Mulkey
Yeah.
from
They fit.
Baylor. They
Yes,
all
oh my
fit.
gosh.
They
Yes.
all fit in LSU. Pat Casey, he's kind of that jigsaw puzzle piece that you just don't know where he's going to go.
I feel like at LSU, you need to hire a coach who is a little bit fiery and is a little bit, in a way, like the fan base.
Mm-hmm.
And Pat Casey, to me, I'm obviously an outsider here, but he doesn't seem to be a fit culturally at all either.
It's going to be an interesting next couple of weeks in the SEC West to see who gets to go to the World Series. I mean, there could be 4 SEC West teams at the World Series. Wouldn't that be something?
Yeah.
And then also, to see what LSU ends up doing to replace Paul Mainieri. The Schlossnagle hire at A&M, that feels like a little bit of a game changer to me because I thought Rob Childress was a really good coach, but I think Schlossnagle is, a rung above that type of coach for the Aggies. So
I'll be interested to see how much they pay him to.
you talking about Schlossnagle?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm sure they're going to break the bank for him.
Yep.
I mean, he was already $1 million a year. He was one of the first $1 million a year coaches in college baseball.
And that's
at
just going to
TCU.
set that bar higher and higher for other coaches.
So
Yeah.
when was TCU here last when they came to Baum?
They were here in 19 for the regional.
In 19? Okay. When they played a regional final against Arkansas,
Mm-hmm.
that felt like 2 heavyweights going at each other.
And that wasn't even a very good TCU team. They were probably the last team to make the tournament.
They
that year.
had
They were the number 3 seed in Fayetteville.
They had a top 10 pick lefty.
Yeah, they had Nick
on the
Lodoto.
mound. Yeah, I mean he was
Lodolo.
he was really solid. I mean, felt like that was a super regional type game.
It was the Lodolo versus Isaiah Campbell game
Yeah.
when Isaiah Campbell went like 8 1/3.
Yeah, I mean that kind of tells you, like you said, like they were a 3 seed in that regional, but I mean that just kind of tells you what Schlossnagle's done there. I mean that felt like two giants kind of going at it.
TCU's always, like we said, TCU's always been able to put out pitchers. A&M gets really good pitchers, and so it feels like a natural slide over for him. So again, there's 6 SEC teams this weekend. Arkansas, NC State, obviously. The other ones to watch, Ole Miss and Arizona. They begin at 8 o'clock on Friday night. That game will be on ESPNU. East Carolina and Vanderbilt, they begin at noon on Friday. That game will be on ESPN2. Tennessee LSU, that's the one to watch. Their series doesn't begin until Saturday night, and it'll be on ESPN2. And then the Notre Dame Mississippi State series, that begins early Saturday afternoon on ESPN. So lots of SEC baseball to watch this weekend. It could end up being that there's 5 SEC teams in Omaha. There's never been a conference that's had more than 4, that conference being the SEC. And Arkansas was one of those 4 the year that happened. So we'll be back next week. We don't know what we'll be talking about. Maybe in Omaha, maybe sitting here in Fayetteville with the season ending. Arkansas and NC State again this weekend. Their game times are 5 o'clock on Friday, 2 o'clock on Saturday, and 5 o'clock if necessary on Sunday. The games will all be on either ESPNU or ESPN2. So we'll be back next week. Maybe we'll be wrapping up the season, or maybe we'll be previewing Stanford or Texas Tech in the College World Series. We appreciate you being with us all season on the WholeHog Baseball Podcast presented by Massage Envy.
The proceeding has been a production of WholeHogSports.com. Look for our latest podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or your favorite podcast store. And visit us anytime at WholeHogSports.com for the latest news and commentary.